I recently gave a talk at the Loudoun County Public Library to a bunch of fifth graders about neuroscience. And after like 2 minutes, they were interrupting me with all these questions, like how do I learn a phone number one day and then remember it the next day? Or why can't my grandmother remember anything? Or why do I always dream about robots? And basically, I didn't have an answer for any of them, because although we've been studying the brain for 2 centuries, we really don't understand almost anything about how it works. What we do have is a really amazing ability to record and measure the brain, and that's evolved a lot even since I started in the field. We used to look at the activity of a single neuron at a time, like 1 out of a million in an anesthetized animal. Now we can use things like genetic engineering and optical methods to be able to literally watch the brain in action and look at the activity of thousands of neurons at the same time using this crazy mesoscope. This is in the mouse brain. And we can do this while animals are performing really rich, complex behavior. So we can put mice, while we're recording activity from their brain, into virtual reality environments, in this case a tactile virtual reality environment. So the mouse is stationary, but there's a microscope on its head. And there are walls moving around to stimulate its whiskers to make it think it's inside of this crazy virtual environment. It's very natural for them. And we're also trying to put humans into the exact same thing and essentially crowdsource human intelligence and measure how people do these tasks and use that to compare it to how the animals do the tasks. So neuroscience is this amazing place right now in terms of what we can measure, but we still don't really understand how it works. And I basically don't know what to tell the fifth graders when they ask me all these questions about all these basic things that we just don't understand. So what are we missing? What are we failing to do? Why aren't we making progress? And how I've really come to feel is that there's a problem with the way that we practice science right now and practice neuroscience, and it's not well matched to the scale and complexity of the kinds of problems that we're trying to solve. And to explain that, I want to tell a personal story about my experience with the government. So I got involved pretty recently, and as probably many of you know, a lot of science is government funded, and especially through places like the NIH. And a couple of years ago, Obama launched something called the Brain Initiative, which was basically an effort to fund a lot of neuroscience research. And in particular, fund a bunch of labs that were going to generate a lot of cool new techniques for generating neuroscience data. So this is fantastic. This is a great idea. But after launching the project, about a year later, they realized that although they had they had all these labs generating incredible data, they didn't really know how they were going to start sharing the data and how they were going to collaborate with each other. So they said that every lab had to come up with a data plan. And all these scientists were like, what the fuck is a data plan? Is it like something that I have to buy for my phone? Like 50 gigabytes of brains, and then if I go over by 5 gigabytes, it's an extra $5. So all the scientists were really confused. And I ended up going to a bunch of panel discussions and talks and meetings to try to talk about some of these problems. And it was really interesting to realize the various challenges involved in sharing data. And it's something that I think a lot about. But what became clear to me working with sort of inside these institutions is that at a very fundamental level, the way that science is funded, and especially the way that academic science is funded, is really not built to incentivize collaboration and sharing. And it's built to basically get individuals to make a lot of progress and build their own tools and their own techniques and not really work together. So one idea is that we should try to centralize the kind of stuff that we're doing. Have like a giant sort of brain moonshot. But the thing is, we don't really know enough. As I said before, we basically don't know a lot about the brain, and there's a lot of diversity in the kinds of things that we should be trying. So if we can't centralize, we need to do something. And the reason we need to do something is because Nick here has built this incredible instrument that lets him look at things that literally nobody has ever looked at before. But Nick spends about 80% of his time just dealing with data. He's just sitting there mucking around, moving data from one place to the next. Now, there are a lot of people who I think could be really helpful in helping Nick solve these problems. The thing is, they work at places like this, and they're not doing neuroscience. And they're building incredible technology, but I think we need to find a way, and it's really a challenge for all of us, to bring people with these expertise into our field and into doing science. And one idea is that we need to embed them in the actual practice of science. So I think it's really important that people doing this kind of work are on the ground with scientists in the lab, moving monitors around and understanding what we're doing. But at the same time, we can't just put a software engineer in every lab, because it's really important that we're building tools that we can share and use across and work together and figure out how to solve these problems in a way that's a little more coordinated than what we're doing now. So really taking inspiration from things built by a lot of the really amazing people here. We recently tried to start a group. Literally right now, this is just a chat room that we called Code for Science, but it's trying to bring people together who are thinking about these problems, and it'd be really fun to talk to people here about how we might do this better as a community together. Thank you.